campaign trail was uncharted territory, and she was up against an establishment candidate with the backing of the governor, Boston's mayor, and organized labor. But on primary day, Democrat Maura Healey handily defeated her opponent to win her party's nomination for Attorney General. Now she takes on Republican John Miller in the general election, and if she wins, will be the first openly gay state Attorney General in the nation. And Maura Healey is here. Welcome.
Thanks.
And
great.
Congratulations.
Thanks for having me on.
So you were up in the polls. It was looking good going into Election Day. But honestly, could you have imagined the margin of victory? It was a virtual definition of a landslide.
No. I mean, we were feeling really great going into Election Day. We worked really hard. I'd spent a lot of time these last 11 months out on the trail, talking to voters, meeting people. There was a lot of energy and excitement going into Election Day, but I had no idea that the numbers would be what they were, and I am just so grateful to the voters and incredibly humbled.
I mean, people all along were talking very enthusiastically about your campaign, but you were up against an establishment figure who's actually very popular. And, in a lot of ways, he's done a lot of media work, and he's been in law firms, and he's been in government himself. What do you attribute it to? Was it his endorsements by the mayor and the governor, and was labor even a factor this time around, even though labor had actually helped Marty Walsh?
Well, it's probably better for others to assess. Getting into this, I'll tell you that I knew I wouldn't have the support of political establishment. I wouldn't have the support of Beacon Hill, but I believed that I could try to make this a campaign about experience and about ideas, and just by getting out day after day, talking to voters, getting out to people across the state, I could make my case. And that's really what I was trying to do. I'm a trial lawyer, and making my case is something I'm used to doing. And, at the end of the day, I'd like to think that that's what enabled us to get to where we were with such a incredible win there the other night.
What's the debate going to be like in the general election? I know you, for instance, have said that you would like to repeal mandatory minimums for low-level drug offenses. What about other things? What about, gun not violence, but holding guns and that kind of thing? There are other things that people get these onerous sentences for that aren't necessarily that bad.
Yeah, certainly what I think about is criminal justice reform is going to be part of what I want to talk about on the campaign trail. It's something I talked about during the course of this race. I mean, this is going to be a race about who is best situated to be the people's lawyer and to fight for people in this state and to fight for matters of public interest, whether it's ending gun violence or leading on criminal justice reform, standing up for consumers and against special interests, being willing to take on public corruption, fighting for civil rights and women's access to reproductive health care. These are the things that I'm going to continue to talk about. I believe they're important to voters, and I think that at the end of the day, voters are going to have to assess who is best situated to be the next Attorney General based on our experience and based on track record.
Now, you took on Martha Coakley a little bit, who was your boss, of course, in the AG's office, over the Partners deal. You're not convinced that was a good deal. That's the merger of the South Shore and the other hospitals up the North Shore into the Partners group, even though those hospitals wanted it. Would you have the power to reverse that if once elected?
Well, I think we got to see what happens with that and so many other issues that are playing out real time. I mean, on that one in particular, Emily, we've got it going to the court later this month, and there'll be some consideration there. We'll just sort of see where we're at when and if I'm elected. But as with any number of things, I'm paying real close attention to what's happening right now, with the idea that someday I want to be Attorney General and want to be Attorney General come January. And, obviously we'll, in that situation, assume responsibility for any number of matters.
You're too young to have been a part of it, but back in the 1980s, well, I'm just going to make that point, when there was the prosecution of the Fells Acres case, that was Violet Amirault, her children, Gerald Amirault and Cheryl, they all ended up going to jail over this charges of sex abuse in this daycare center. Even today, I got emails. We've been getting them all along. And somebody stopped me on the street and said this to me too. I will not vote for Martha Coakley because of Fells Acre. Have you ever looked at that case? Do you know where you stand on it? Do you think it happened? Was it a fabrication of those kids' minds? Do we have the perspective of history now on that? And was that a big mistake?
You know, I just am not in a position to answer those questions. It is true. It is a matter that happened long before my time, and it's not something that I've looked at. And I know, you know, as a prosecutor and as somebody who is looking to have responsibility for prosecutorial decisions and discretion down the line, you know, my perspective is it's really important that you bring informed judgment and thinking to these things, and you know, I certainly plan to do that as Attorney General, but I cannot speak to that matter.
Is it something that you would ever look at again? Because it left a bitter taste in the mouths of a lot of people. I mean, the whole family did considerable jail time, and no one was ever actually exonerated. People were let out, and there was a couple of deals made and stuff, but would you go back and look at that, or have an independent committee look at it and just say, try to resolve it once and for all?
Well, you know, I don't know that there would be a mechanism or a need to, from the Attorney General's perspective. That was a district attorney prosecution and matter. But you know, I'll take just give you a perspective generally on these things. It is really important to me, as somebody who's been both a prosecutor and a civil rights lawyer, that we make sure that we're doing all we can to make sure that the right procedures were followed on any number of instances, and that includes investigations and prosecutions. If, for example, Emily, it came to my attention, and this could happen within the scope of the work of the Attorney General's office, that someone was wrongfully convicted of a crime, I'd be the first to take steps and make sure that the Attorney General's office was taking steps to address that immediately.
So, would you know your opponent if you saw him? John Miller?
You know, I haven't had occasion to spend much time with
But have you met him?
John Miller at all. I met him at an event one time, but I don't know much about him.
I was going to say, do you know anything about him? We're going to find out. We're going to invite him here. We'll find out about him.
Sure, and I look forward to engaging with him and having discussions with him as we both make our case to the voters over the next several weeks.
All right. Maura Healey, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
See you soon.